Every story needs someone to hate. That's the job we give the villain. Be wrong. Be cruel. Be the reason the hero gets to look good by comparison. But every so often, a story gives you a villain who isn't actually wrong. Just honest. Honest about something everyone else is too afraid to say out loud. Today, we're talking about one specific case. A man who spent regression after regression as one of the story's most consistent enemies. And yet, he turned out to be one of its most quietly tragic characters. Before the world ended, he wasn't anyone's villain. He was just a man with a family, living an ordinary life with nothing to do with regressions, scenarios, or evil rankings. Then, the scenarios began, and somewhere in those first brutal days, before anyone understood the rules of the new world, before anyone knew how to protect what mattered, he lost his family. Not in some grand sacrifice, not in some heroic last stand. They were just gone, the way most people disappear in an apocalypse. Suddenly, meaninglessly, with no time to prepare, and no one to blame, except a universe that had stopped making sense. After that, he built something from the wreckage, a fortress, a territory that belonged only to him. Turret after turret after turret, layer upon layer of defenses. Nothing got through unless he allowed it. People called him a landlord, but it wasn't about power. It was about control. Because the last time he couldn't protect the people around him, he lost every single one of them. That's not the profile of a man who enjoys hurting people. It's the profile of a man who decided that vigilance was the only form of love he had left. And here's where things become interesting. Regression after regression. Timeline after timeline, he always ended up standing against the protagonist. Different circumstances, different choices, different paths, same ending. Enemy, that's worth thinking about. People don't become recurring villains by accident. Something about the shape of his grief kept creating the exact same collision, again and again and again. He wasn't cruel for the sake of cruelty. He was protecting something, his territory, his resources, the people who were still alive because of him. And from his perspective, the protagonist looked exactly like every other threat that had already taken everything from him once before. Put simply, he wasn't the opposite of the hero. He was a version of the hero, the version that might have existed if nobody had ever reached him first. And that's what makes this story different. Because this time, something changes. Doesn't walk into his territory the way every other protagonist did. He already knows how this story ends. He's read it over and over and over again. Every version, every failed encounter, every timeline that ended with the same conclusion. Enemy. So, instead of repeating the pattern, he does something surprisingly simple. He talks to him. not as a villain, not as an obstacle, as a person, someone worth negotiating with, instead of someone who simply needed to be defeated. There isn't some dramatic speech, no miracle, no instant redemption, just a contract, an alliance, a reason to point all those turrets at something other than the next stranger who reminded him of what he'd lost. He doesn't become a different man. He's still guarded, still territorial, still suspicious, still difficult. The only thing that changes is what he's protecting and who he's protecting it with. And he wasn't the only one. The group he belonged to was full of people just like him. Different titles, different methods, different scars. A poisoner, a fortress master, a cult leader. People the story wanted you to fear, long before it ever asked you to understand them. But underneath all those labels, the pattern is almost identical. Catastrophic loss, followed by a single decision. Never again will I be powerless. Never again will I lose everything without a fight. Different people, same wound. That's not lazy writing. That's the point. The story quietly suggests that villain was never really a personality type. It was a stage of grief. Some people found their way out. Some never did. And that's where the story refuses to give you an easy answer. It never proves he was wrong about the world. Because he wasn't. The world really was that dangerous. His paranoia was earned. The story never asks you to believe his fear was irrational. Instead, it asks a different question. Does surviving have to mean facing everything alone? That's the real argument this redemption arc is making. Not, you were wrong to protect yourself, but you don't have to protect yourself forever against everyone. And if that sounds familiar, it's because this isn't really about fantasy. It's about people. The difference between someone who's been hurt and closed themselves off forever, and someone who's been hurt but somehow stayed reachable. He didn't change because someone convinced him the danger wasn't real. He changed because, for the first time, across every regression, someone arrived who wasn't asking him to lower his guard, only to point it somewhere that mattered, was never wrong about the world. The world took his family and gave him nothing back. The only thing he was wrong about was believing that no one was ever coming back for him.